This is Reverend Ron, Enlightened Spiritual Master. This is going to be video number 5 in my series. Today I want to talk about this big pile of books that I have down here. And the reason I want to talk about this pile of books and what this has to do with spiritual enlightenment is a lot of people will tell you that their book and their church and their way is the inspired Word of God. Now, especially people will tell you that the Holy Bible here is the inspired Word of God. And other people will tell you different things about their work. For instance, A Course in Miracles here is supposed to have been channeled from Jesus to Helen Schucman, and she wrote down everything Jesus told her, and this became A Course in Miracles. So this is kind of sort of the inspired Word of God in a way. This thing here that I have, the Urantia book, it's one of the latest things out. It's supposedly written and channeled from worldly intelligence, you know, throughout the galaxies and stuff like that. It's a very, very long book. It's 2,097 pages is what I count here. Yeah, all the way to the end of it, 2,097 pages. So this is another book. Then I have another one here. It's Gospel Principles. It's from the Mormon Church, and this is, the inspired Word of God. Supposedly, God and Jesus talked to Joseph Smith in the garden, and it's the inspired Word of God. So that's what all these things are supposed to be. Now, what these things represent to me is a very, very baseline. What these things represent to me and what I first consider them as, they are to me, they are the written Word of man. I do not, in fact, know, I have no way of verifying that they're the inspired Word of God, because God hasn't communicated with me and spoken to me about these things, so I accept them as the written Word of man. And that's really all anybody should accept these things as. Now, let's see, I have a whole lot of books here. I'll give you an example here. Now, this was written by David Hawkins. He's a mystic who hangs out in Sedona, Arizona, which is a hotbed of mysticism. It's called Discovery of the Presence of God. Now, you would look at the title of this book and you would say to yourself, well, wow, God must have communicated with him, to write a book like this. But that's not necessarily the case. And then you look at some of these things. Here's another one, Philosophy of Masters. This is from the Far East, it's another one. So you look at some of these things and you say, well, the common reaction to all of this, all of these books from a lot of people, the very common reaction that a lot of people have is, well, it must be the inspired Word of God, because man couldn't have possibly written anything this complex and this long, and man couldn't have possibly have made all of this up. Especially this Urantia book, people look at that and say, man couldn't have possibly made all of this up. Well, my reaction to that is, why couldn't man have made all of this up? Why couldn't it be the work of man? I'll give you an example. Stephen King is a well-known author. He probably has a stack of books. He's probably written books stacked from here to the ceiling, just tons and tons of books and thousands of pages. But nobody thinks that his work is anything other than the work of Stephen King. Nobody would certainly tell you that that's the inspired Word of God by any means. They would tell you that's absurd, of course it's his work. Here's another one. It's a beautiful book. It's well written. When I bought this a lot of years ago, it was a high dollar book. It's Cosmos by Carl Sagan. If you didn't know better, it's 336 pages. If you didn't know better, you might swear this was the work of God, produced by the mind of God. There's a ton of other things out there. If you go to school and you study electrical engineering, the handbook on electrical engineering is probably like this thick, yet that's a work of man. You go to medical school and you study neurosurgery, the neurosurgery handbook is probably that thick, but that's a work of man. So all of these things in the spiritual realm, nobody should feel in awe of them by any means. You should just accept them as what they are, and if you read through something, if you feel that it's the work of God and this applies to your life and you want to run your life by it, that's fine, do it that way. But if you're somewhat skeptical and don't think, well, this is what it is, and it doesn't apply to me, well, that's okay too. So that's going to close out video number 5 here, and this is Reverend Ron, Enlightened Spiritual Master, signing off, and I'll see you in video number 6.